And CNN equals politics. Elections coming up. There are two high-profile governor's races next Tuesday in Virginia and New Jersey, and both could end up being a referendum on President Obama. To Virginia first, where President Obama won last year. The latest Washington Post poll has Republican Bob McConnell 9 points ahead of Democrat Creigh Deeds. And in New Jersey, President Obama also won there in last year's election. 3 candidates in the governor's race there, but polls show it's a close fight between the incumbent Democrat John Corzine and Republican challenger Chris Christie. Here to help us break down these races and what we can expect to see in a week's time, author, conservative columnist Tony Blankley, along with Democratic strategist Kiki McLean. So let's take a look, first of all, at Virginia. Bob McConnell outpolling Creigh Deeds. At one point, it was in double digits, seems to have narrowed just a little bit, as we mentioned. President Obama, the first Democrat to win that state in 40 years in the presidential side. 5 out of the last 7 Virginia governors have been Democrats. Tony Blankley, what's going on in that state?
Well, first you have to know that in these situations, both parties will always say that if they lose, it was because of local circumstances and a bad candidate, and if they win, it's because of national trends. So that's sort of the lens through which to watch all the commentary. In fact, Deeds has been a pretty poor candidate, I think. I'm a Virginian. I follow the election a little bit more closely than out-of-state elections. And McConnell, I think, has run a good campaign. I should disclose I've contributed a couple $100 to the McConnell campaign. No, not a lot, but I am for McConnell. I think the most interesting thing was what the White House started saying last week, which was they started disowning the campaign, even as the president was getting ready to campaign there yesterday, which is very undercutting. But we've seen this before when White Houses expect the loss and they're trying to cut the implications of the loss by undercutting the candidate they're supporting.
Well, Kiki McLean, talk to us a little bit about that. You know, that Tony said that Creigh Deeds had not run a terrific campaign. There would be some agreement from the White House on that. They think that he didn't follow their advice. President Obama's support for him has been, I guess you could say, tepid probably. Why didn't the White House get more firmly behind him? Because wouldn't it send a very big signal if the state that they carried in November and the one that's got 2 Democratic senators in it suddenly had a Republican governor?
Well, you know, the biggest gift the White House can give a candidate is a time on the president's calendar, which they actually did give the Deeds campaign this week. I think one of the things that's meant to do is to help trigger sort of some of those voters from the Obama surge last year into this game. You had a lot of new voters last year in the presidential campaign. One of the questions will be, will they come back and perform again and again? Traditionally, voting in the off year, and remember this is unique, the way New Jersey and Virginia vote this year for their governor's races, will they come back in an off year? Traditionally, they don't necessarily do that. Hopefully, the Obama appearance will trigger some of that support for Deeds. But, you know, Tony raises an interesting point, pardon me, which is that it is, you know, people have this debate constantly about national trends, local issues. Governor's races in particular, it's not so much who won or lost as it is governor's races are really about a job for a CEO locally. In a week, you could see a close because we don't really know how Virginia performs anymore. And I think what you're seeing in New Jersey with Governor Corzine is a race where an incumbent governor in a really difficult economy has battled his way back, and I actually think that's good news. And I would say to you that the folks over at the Republican National Committee are also saying, why can't we make more inroads? There's been so much controversy this year. Why can't we get further? So each side will spin it their way, but, you know, ultimately you have to wait and see what happens on Tuesday.
Yeah, you know, obviously in New Jersey, the big story is a 3-way race, and the third candidate is drawing support. So basically the Republican candidate, Christie, has been slipping pretty steadily. The governor, the Democrat, the incumbent, has not been going up much, if anything, but the votes have been going from Christie, who was ahead by high single digits, to the third candidate. Right. We'll see whether those votes stick at the end or whether they go back to one of the 2 primary candidates.
All right, and Jen, talking about races where there are more than one person or 2 people in it, let's go to upstate New York to the 23rd Congressional District, Tony, where you've got 2 Republicans running, Didi Scott-Safava and Doug Hoffman. Scott-Safava is the moderate, Hoffman is the conservative. Sarah Palin and Tim Pawlenty have come out in favor of Hoffman, saying that nothing less is at stake here than the future of the party. You got a split in the Republican Party here, and particularly in New York, but really across the country on ideology and which way the party needs to go. Do you move more conservative, or do you move to the moderate side of things?
It's less ideology, I think, than tactics. I did my column on that this week. My old boss, Newt, and I split our views on this. The normal procedure, if you're a party person, is you support the nominee of your party, and that way you expect when your side wins, if the Conservatives win a nomination, you get the moderates to support you. If the moderates win the nomination, you get the Conservatives. But what's happening now is this tremendous passion, this anti-Obama passion that's rising out of the town halls, et cetera, and it's just getting stronger. The Republican Party is having a fight over whether to fully embrace that or keep their distance from it. And it hasn't been decided. Now, if the third-party conservative candidate wins, I think that will probably decisively drive a lot of Republican establishment people to recognize this is a season to be very ideological and high and arch in your rhetoric. If either the Democrat wins or the standard Republican wins in New York 23, then I think the fight goes on for another round.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Didi. Make your point.
Well, what I was going to say is, let's not forget there is a Democrat in the race there. This is a long-held Republican seat, and I think what it's really a demonstration of is a lack of leadership in the Republican Party at all. And that's really where you have a group of national Republicans who have their own self-interests at stake about their own presidential prospects. So Newt Gingrich in one place, Pawlenty in another, Romney staying out of it completely. And so I think what you see, frankly, is a lack of leadership. And it's clear that there's not somebody in the party saying, here's our vision, here's where we're going, let's get behind candidates who represent that vision.
That's the natural state. When the president's party has a leader, it's called the president, and the opposition party doesn't have a leader because they got 50 senators, and so it's almost always the case.
In Congress, Tony, you might want to call the leadership offices over there. The minority leaders might find that a little offensive.
You know the history that no party, other than I'd argue Newt in '94 and the Jayhawks before the War of 1812, where you ever had real coherence in a party that was not led by a president. That's not in the nature of American politics.
I'll tell you one thing, it's great to be back in the political season, no question about it. Tony Blankley and Kiki McLean, great to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Isn't it good to be back,
Yeah.
The rough and tumble of the campaign?
Yeah, of course, of course. You need something to liven things up a little bit there in Washington. Well, still ahead, we're also